Picture a young lad barely out of his teens, strutting with the confidence of a peacock. Now imagine that same youngster conquering most of the known world before he's even old enough to grow a proper beard. Born in 356 BC, Alexander wasn't content with just inheriting Daddy's kingdom. He created the largest empire the ancient world had ever seen, all before the age of 32. Despite kicking the bucket over 2 millennia ago, Alexander's influence still looms large. His name is synonymous with greatness, ambition, and perhaps a touch of madness. Alexander the Great, the man who made conquering look easy and left the rest of us feeling rather mortal. Was he a visionary leader or a ruthless tyrant, a brilliant strategist or a lucky gambler? The answers are complex, contradictory, and utterly fascinating. So, buckle up, dear reader, as we embark on a journey through time to unravel the enigma that is Alexander the Great. Imagine being born into a family where your dad's hobby is conquering kingdoms and your mum's idea of a bedtime story involves tales of your divine ancestry. Welcome to the world of young Alexander, born in 356 BC to King Philip II of Macedon and Olympias. Talk about pressure. The kid probably learned to swing a sword before he could walk. Growing up in the Macedonian court wasn't all fun and games. Young Alex had to navigate a world where today's allies could be tomorrow's enemies. At 10, Alexander tamed the supposedly untamable horse Bucephalus by turning it towards the sun. It's the kind of tale that makes you wonder what you were doing at 10. But Alexander's early years weren't all horse whispering and heroics. He had a complicated relationship with his father, Philip II. Imagine your dad being a successful king and conqueror and you're just itching to prove you can do better. The tension between them was so thick you could cut it with a sarissa. This father-son drama would shape Alexander's future in ways that would make even the most seasoned therapist raise an eyebrow. Now, if you thought your education was top-notch, prepare to feel a twinge of envy. Young Alexander didn't just have any old tutor, he had Aristotle. Yes, that Aristotle. King Philip II decided that only the best would do for his son's education, so he lured Aristotle away from Athens with promises of rebuilding his hometown. For 3 years, from 13 to 16, Alexander soaked up knowledge like a sponge. Aristotle taught him everything from philosophy and politics to zoology and literature. Can you imagine the homework assignments? Write a treatise on the nature of virtue and don't forget to feed the horses. It's no wonder Alexander grew up to be a bit of an overachiever. Aristotle had a knack for making learning engaging, even for a restless teenager with dreams of world domination. He introduced Alexander to the works of Homer, particularly the Iliad. Alexander was so enamored with the epic tale that he kept a copy under his pillow, right next to his dagger. The influence of Aristotle on Alexander can't be overstated. It shaped his worldview, his approach to leadership, and even his treatment of conquered peoples. Alexander's famous quote, "I am indebted to my father for living, but to my teacher for living well," speaks volumes about the impact Aristotle had on him. The Gordian knot, a tale so deliciously symbolic it's almost too good to be true. But why let a little thing like historical accuracy get in the way of a good story? Picture this. A young, ambitious Alexander arrives in the city of Gordium. There he encounters an ancient wagon with its yoke tied in an impossibly complex knot. Legend had it that whoever could untie this knot would become the ruler of Asia. Now, your average Joe might have spent hours trying to untangle this mythical knot, but Alexander, he wasn't about to let a bit of fancy rope work stand in the way of his destiny. According to the most dramatic version of the tale, our impatient hero simply drew his sword and sliced through the knot in one swift stroke. Problem solved, prophecy fulfilled. Some historians suggest that the reality might have been a bit less dramatic. Perhaps Alexander simply pulled out the linchpin holding the yoke to the wagon, thereby untying the knot without actually touching it. Regardless of how it actually went down, the Gordian knot incident became a defining moment in Alexander's legend. It perfectly encapsulated his approach to obstacles, direct, decisive, and with a flair for the dramatic. This cut-the-knot mentality would serve him well in his military campaigns. Let's talk war, shall we? Not the polite, I'll stand here, you stand there kind of war. No, we're talking Alexander's brand of warfare, a heady mix of brilliant strategy, daring maneuvers, and the kind of confidence that makes modern-day rock stars look positively shy. Alexander didn't just win battles, he revolutionized the art of war. At the heart of Alexander's military genius was the Macedonian phalanx, a formation of soldiers armed with those ridiculously long spears, the sarissas. Picture a human porcupine, but angrier and with better armor. This formation was nearly impenetrable from the front, creating a wall of sharp, pointy death. But Alexander wasn't content with just having a good defense. He made it mobile, turning the phalanx into a versatile killing machine. His pièce de résistance was the hammer and anvil technique. The phalanx would engage the enemy head-on, the anvil, while Alexander led a cavalry charge, the hammer, to smash into the enemy's flank or rear. It was simple, effective, and absolutely devastating. What set Alexander apart wasn't just his tactics, though. It was his ability to read the battlefield like a book, adapting his plans on the fly. He had a knack for spotting the enemy's weaknesses and exploiting them mercilessly. His men would have followed him to the ends of the earth, and, spoiler alert, they pretty much did. Now, let's set the stage for Alexander's greatest hits tour, also known as the Persian campaign. Picture this: a 22-year-old Alexander, fresh from subduing revolts in Greece, decides it's time to take on the biggest, baddest empire around Persia. On the other side, we have Darius III, the Persian king of kings. Poor Darius. He was probably having a nice, relaxing day on his golden throne when news arrived that some upstart Macedonian brat was invading his empire. The first major clash came at the Battle of Issus in 333 BC. Alexander, displaying his usual subtlety, smashed through the Persian lines. Darius, showing the kind of bravery that gets you remembered in history books, but not in a good way, decided that discretion was the better part of valor and fled. Alexander's forces routed the Persians, and our young conqueror got his first taste of victory against the big boys. But the real showstopper came 2 years later at the Battle of Gaugamela. This time Darius had home field advantage and a massive army that outnumbered Alexander's forces. It should have been a slam dunk for the Persians. Should have been. But Alexander, being Alexander, had other ideas. He employed his trademark hammer and anvil tactic, personally leading the cavalry charge that broke through the Persian lines. Darius, once again demonstrating his impressive sprinting skills, fled the battlefield. Having conquered Persia and apparently gotten bored with the lack of challenges, Alexander set his sights on India. In 326 BC, Alexander and his army crossed the Hindu Kush mountains and entered the Punjab region of India. "Alexander, lads, we've conquered everything from Greece to Persia. What shall we do next?" exhausted soldier. "Go home and relax?" Alexander, "Nah, let's invade India. I hear they have elephants." Alexander's forces encountered something they'd never seen before: war elephants. These weren't your cute, cuddly circus elephants. These were massive, armored beasts that could trample entire formations of men. But our boy Alex wasn't about to let a few oversized pachyderms ruin his conquering spree. He adapted his tactics, using noise and fire to spook the elephants and turn them against their own army. Alexander's forces defeated King Porus at the Battle of the Hydaspes in what was arguably one of the toughest fights of his career. However, India proved to be Alexander's limit, not because he couldn't conquer it, but because his army had finally had enough. After years of constant warfare, homesickness, and probably a severe lack of decent Macedonian cuisine, the soldiers put their foot down. They essentially said, "Boss, we love you, but if we have to march one more step, we're going to lose it." Even Alexander, with all his charisma and threats, couldn't persuade them to go further. Now we come to the million drachma question. Was Alexander truly deserving of the title great, or was it just a case of really good PR? It's a debate that's raged for centuries, probably starting about 5 minutes after Alexander breathed his last.